mean, the worst of it was a week ago when he decided to completely dismantle and destroy USAID, which is the wing of the U.S. government that was now that we're in a very dark place in America, where we have a bully and a thug who is the President of the United States.
Richard Gere, Hollywood's symbol of peace, just fired shots at Donald Trump, calling him a bully and a thug. In an instant, a new celebrity feud was born, and social media lit up like a 4th of July fireworks show. Gere, known for his spiritual wisdom and zen-like calm, just stepped into the chaos Trump thrives on. And if history tells us anything, Trump won't let this slide. His next all-caps Truth Social rant is practically inevitable. The real question is, will this be another forgettable Hollywood versus Trump moment, or is Gere about to be pulled into a media firestorm he never saw coming?
It's about the tragedy that we're all experiencing in the U.S. I mean, the worst of it was a week ago when he decided to completely dismantle and destroy USAID, which is the wing of the U.S. government that was started around the time of Ronald Reagan, I believe.
If there was ever a celebrity feud nobody saw coming, it's Richard Gere versus Donald Trump, the Zen master versus the Chaos King. Gere, a man who radiates incense and quiet wisdom, just shattered his peaceful image with 2 words: bully and thug. The Hollywood icon, better known for meditating than mudslinging, has now found himself in the middle of a political firestorm. Meanwhile, Trump, never one to back down from a public fight, is probably drafting a furious all-caps response as we speak. The question is, will this be a passing headline, or has Gere unknowingly signed up for a never-ending Twitter war?
Well, I mean, our president has pushed it to the limit. It can't go any further than this. I mean, he came out of reality show television. He's like a game show person. There's no truth to it. There's no center to it.
For decades, Gere's brand has been built on quiet humanitarian work, Tibetan Buddhism, and acceptance speeches filled with phrases like love and compassion will heal the world. The man could probably balance a lotus flower on his head while delivering a lecture on kindness, and you'd believe every word. But now, in a twist no one saw coming, he's traded serenity for a sharp jab, calling Trump a bully and a thug. It's like watching a monk throw the first punch in a bar fight. Unexpected, but oddly fascinating. The real question is, does Gere have more to say, or was this his one and only mic drop?
The number of hate crimes in the U.S. went up enormously as soon as Donald Trump started running for president.
Donald Trump, on the other hand, is all about keeping a fight going. He's known for never backing down, especially when it comes to public spats. Whether it's his time as a reality TV star, his constant Twitter rants, or even as president, Trump never shies away from a battle. His approach? Simple. If you say something he doesn't like, get ready for a long social media post with lots of random capital letters and a touch of drama to make it extra memorable. For Trump, every disagreement is a chance to be in the spotlight.
Shock. My wife is in shock. We're all in shock. It was, all the people spoke and they elected this president. And that's a fact. But I don't even think the people who elected him really believed that he was going to do what he said he was going to do.
What makes this feud so entertaining is just how wildly mismatched these two are. Richard Gere is the kind of guy who would take a jab at you with a thoughtful metaphor about letting go of the ego, while Trump would probably just call him a balding Buddha and move on without a second thought. It's like watching a peaceful poet accidentally wander into a wrestling ring, only to realize he's about to face off with The Rock. It's a clash of worlds, and honestly, it's kind of impossible to look away.
I hate to say it, but these clowns who are around our president are extremely immature, narcissistic people. So that kind of power and narcissism
is deadly.
But here's the real twist. Nobody even saw this beef coming. There wasn't a long history of tension between Richard Gere and Donald Trump. Gere wasn't out there making jokes about Trump on talk shows or subtweeting him from a secret account. This feud seemed to pop up out of nowhere, like the universe decided we needed an unexpected celebrity rivalry to keep things interesting in 2025. One minute, Gere was accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award, probably ready to thank his spiritual guides and the Dalai Lama. The next minute, he's calling Trump a bully and a thug in front of Hollywood's elite. It was one of those moments that had everyone doing a double take. Even the clappers in the room were probably thinking, did Richard Gere just throw shade at Trump? And you just know Trump was probably watching, Diet Coke in hand, already preparing to fire back with a tweet before the show even ended.
Fortunately, we have leaders that stimulate fear, and that fear causes us to do really terrible things. I think that's part of what we're talking about in the film here. The most horrible thing that Trump has done, he's conflated two words, refugee and terrorist.
Because if there's one thing Donald Trump can't resist, it's an older Hollywood actor throwing shade his way, especially someone who spent most of their time meditating on world peace instead of picking fights. Once social media caught wind of the clip, the internet exploded. Half the comments were celebrating Richard Gere as the new hero of Hollywood clapbacks, while the other half were already writing 700-word essays about how a man who starred in Runaway Bride had no business challenging Trump's legacy. It was chaotic, hilarious, and totally out of left field. Basically everything the internet thrives on. The plan was simple, but things took a wild turn. The Lifetime Achievement Award was supposed to be Richard Gere's feel-good moment. A night of nostalgia, soft piano music, and clips from Pretty Woman mixed with shots of him cuddling endangered animals in exotic locations. The room was ready for it. After all, Hollywood loves nothing more than giving one of its own a carefully crafted legacy moment, complete with a speech about art, compassion, and the transformative power of cinema. But of course, that's not quite how it went down.
The administration is pulling back from all of those human responsibilities, and it seems all he cares about is money.
Richard Gere, in his typical composed fashion, took the stage that night, looking every bit the refined, silver-haired guru in his sharp tuxedo. The audience expected the usual, gentle, thoughtful words of gratitude for his colleagues, his family, and, of course, the Dalai Lama. For about 90 seconds, the speech felt like a peaceful meditation, and everyone was mentally preparing to tweet about his elegance and class. But then, with his signature calm and controlled demeanor, Gere unexpectedly took a hard turn. He casually dropped two words, bully and thug, without flinching. At first, the room seemed confused, unsure if they'd heard it right. The crowd's polite applause continued like autopilot, but slowly a wave of realization swept through them. Richard Gere had just thrown a bombshell. What was supposed to be a quiet tribute had suddenly transformed into an unexpected call-out, leaving the audience in stunned silence, wondering if they had just witnessed a feud kickoff.
It was much worse than what he even said. The profundity, the dark profundity of what he's been doing in the last week is mind-boggling. This is dark time in the U.S., and I think it's a time for everyone to stand.
The room was filled with a curious mix of gasps, clinking wine glasses, and that uncomfortable "should we be applauding this?" energy, something that only happens when someone goes totally off script at a high-class event. Gere, completely unfazed, dropped his bombshell like he was listing off items for his next grocery run, then smoothly transitioned back into his talk about global compassion, as if he hadn't just set the room on fire. It was a level of quiet mastery that only someone who had spent decades in remote monasteries could achieve, calmly above the chaos, yet somehow very much enjoying the spectacle. By the time the standing ovation began, mostly from the front rows, filled with Hollywood liberals who'd cheer for just about anything with the right energy, the internet had already exploded, clips were circulating, hot takes were coming in fast, and somewhere, a 22-year-old graphic designer was already creating memes with Gary's face photoshopped onto a Mortal Kombat fighter, the caption reading, "Finish him." Meanwhile, the rest of the audience sat there, still processing what had just happened, as if unsure whether they had just witnessed an epic moment of cultural history or the latest Hollywood disaster.
Part of a universe of overlapping pain and sadness and joy and expectations and dreams and hopes and visions. And I see this world that we're in now forgetting that. And this kind of very foolish tribalism is starting to take us over.
where we think we're all separate from each other. And we have, unfortunately, elected officials that don't inspire us in the way we want to be inspired.
Richard Gere, a man who radiates the energy of a Himalayan salt lamp, casually dropped a truth bomb on a former president like it was no big deal, as if he were hosting an open mic at a laid-back Venice Beach poetry bar. It was one of those moments nobody saw coming, which only made it more epic. If you know anything about Gere beyond his trademark smolder and perfectly wind-blown hair, you'd know this wasn't some impulsive outburst. It was the result of decades of quiet rebellion. Gere might give off the vibe of a man who greets each morning with meditation, apologizing to his plants for overwatering them, but underneath that serene exterior is someone who's been challenging powerful institutions for years. The kicker? He's always done it in that calm, almost apologetic tone that somehow makes you feel guilty for disagreeing with him. Long before celebrity activism became the trend of posting hashtags on Instagram, Gere was already making waves, even getting blacklisted from the Oscars for calling out China's human rights violations while presenting an award.
He used to be someone that we had empathy for, used to be someone we cared about, someone we wanted to help, that we wanted to give refuge to, a refugee. We wanted to help. Now we're afraid of them. And this is something that's the biggest crime in itself, conflating these two ideas.
Back in 1993, while most actors were still giving their obligatory thank yous to agents and tossing in the occasional Save the Whales shout-out, Richard Gere had a different idea. He looked at the Oscars, Hollywood's biggest night, and decided, yeah, I'm going to turn this into a platform for Tibetan independence. And he did, never once looking back. Gere's been risking his career for what he believes in longer than some social media activists have even been alive. And if you think his battles are limited to distant governments, think again. Gere once took on the Catholic Church, calling them out for their stance on contraception and their lack of action around AIDS awareness in a way that left people wondering why saving lives was taking a backseat to doctrine. The fact that he's managed to maintain a reputation as Hollywood's nicest guy shows that you can drop some seriously savage truth bombs as long as you do it in the tone of someone reading a bedtime story. But if there's one modern figure who embodies everything Gere stands against, it's Donald Trump. The ego-driven, power-hungry bully mentality is essentially the final boss in Gere's lifelong quest for universal compassion.
We have a problem with him. His impulses are diametrically opposed to what we have evolved as human beings and as a country. But he's not unique, and we see this around the world, that these movements to withdraw, to retreat, to challenge the basic laws of nature, the laws of physics, that we are all in this together.
Trump's stance on immigration, climate change, and minority rights wasn't just something Gere disagreed with. It was the exact kind of fear-driven, power-hungry rhetoric Gere had been speaking out against for years. While Trump built his political brand on the idea that kindness is weak, Gere has spent decades preaching compassion, empathy, and the power of understanding like a human embodiment of a peaceful retreat. These two couldn't coexist in the same space without something major going down. It was only a matter of time before Gere would break his usual calm and speak out about what he had surely been grumbling for years. So when he stood on that stage and called Trump a bully and a thug, it wasn't just a provocative line for the show. It was a carefully measured lifetime of belief boiling over. Gere wasn't just taking a jab. He was delivering a truth Trump couldn't ignore. And if Trump thought he could dismiss it like another celebrity quip, he was clearly underestimating Gere's quiet power to dismantle his whole persona with a few well-chosen words. Within seconds, the internet, being its usual chaotic self, blew up. Twitter had already erupted before Gere even finished his speech. What started as a random celebrity feud quickly became a full-scale digital spectacle.
Around really destroying our country. They're destroying our country at the border. They will allow, in my opinion, because you don't hear the real numbers, 15 million people into our country by the time Biden gets out, which hopefully will be very soon. If they get another term, this country is finished. By the time he gets out, and the people are coming from prisons all over the world, they're coming from mental institutions all over the world, and they're terrorists, and This country is going to be suffering a very big price.
Headlines flooded in faster than you could refresh your feed. Richard Gere calls Trump a thug, and of course, Twitter had plenty to say. Some outlets went for the drama, calling Gere the Hollywood Buddha, declaring war on the MAGA king. Half the internet was in awe of Gere's calm and calculated words, hailing him as a soft-spoken savage who could end careers with nothing but a well-timed pause and a piercing metaphor. Meanwhile, Trump's supporters, never missing a beat, dusted off the old insults, calling Gere a washed-up actor past his prime, because clearly Pretty Woman was his last shot at relevancy. Then of course came the meme gold, a photoshopped image of Gere's face on the Dalai Lama's body with the words "inner peace." Nah. Inner clapbacks. And as always, in the midst of the chaos, one rogue conspiracy theorist had to pop up, claiming Gere was secretly part of a Hollywood Illuminati plot to awaken the masses. Because, naturally, a 75-year-old man who spends his time rescuing stray dogs and talking about compassion is clearly plotting a government takeover. But none of that stopped the inevitable. Trump was already winding up to respond. If there's one thing you can always count on, it's that when someone takes a swing at Trump, he'll be right there, throwing a punch right back.
How weak and pathetic is a guy like that?
By the time late night hosts got a hold of this bizarre feud, it was like comedy season was officially open. Stephen Colbert dubbed it the spiritual showdown no one asked for, but everyone needed, while Jimmy Kimmel called Gere the Dalai Lama of drama. Even SNL was rumored to be dusting off Alec Baldwin's wig, ready to play Trump once again, because in 2025, celebrity feuds have become America's unofficial favorite sport. In a world full of deep fakes and AI influencers, Richard Gere versus Donald Trump might just be the most 2025 thing ever. Random, unnecessary, and yet somehow completely perfect. It's like the universe threw a dart at a celebrity bingo board and thought, let's see what happens if these two start beefing. These public celebrity clashes have become a guilty pleasure. Like reality TV we can't stop watching. Messier than the news, funnier than most sitcoms, and always available in meme-sized doses. Gere versus Trump is just the latest episode in Hollywood's endless soap opera, but this time, the casting feels more like a fever dream than a carefully planned plot. And while the chaos is hilarious, there's something strangely symbolic about it all. Two very different figures from two very different worlds, embodying the clash between compassion and confrontation in a society that seems to thrive on the drama.